In this tutorial, I start with an empty GitHub repository. I check it out on my local machine and start creating code. I will locally test it and locally build a wheel package from it. Once that works, I add a workflow with GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions will then be configured to run the tests and produce the wheel package. By the time we are done, there is a GitHub repo that has a workflow that tests the code and creates a wheel package. But there is a small disclaimer, and I'm going to tell you a little secret. As a Python trainer, I have the luxury to focus on code and software engineering. I could always steer away from build systems and deployment and the configuration misery that comes along with it. But recently I had to dive in, and what do you know? I actually enjoyed the process. But I noticed I'm quite lagging behind with all this stuff. There is so much to learn here. Like building a package from my code, how to automate linting and unit testing, and preferably I only want to set up this once and with each git push do all these tasks automatically. Collectively, this is known as continuous integration, and this belongs to the daily work of DevOps. Although I did my research, I'm going to bluff my way through this tutorial, and if you think there are better ways to do the stuff I will show here, please let me know in the comments because I also want to learn from it. That said, these are the tasks at hand. If you want to read them, pause the video. Otherwise, let's start with the first task. Create a GitHub repository. I'm going to check it out. Now, the first thing I will do is create a folder structure that allows me to build my project as a package. This folder, calculator, is going to be my package. It is something that I'm going to build as a wheel so I can pip install it and use it from another project. It contains a Python file, and I will just create two test functions to see if everything works. And that's that. That's all the code we are going to use. I will also create a test folder which contains my tests. Now let's see how this works. How can the tests access the operations module? Let's see if this works. I'm going to use PyTest for testing, and I need to pip install this. So I will create a virtual environment to do this. So I pip install PyTest. Okay, now I should be able to run the tests. And that does not work. PyTest is not able to access the calculator from the test. I'm going to add a PyTest configuration file. I'm going to save it and try the test again. And that's better. Now the next thing I'm going to do is run Flake 8 to check if I have written my code according to standards. So I will pip install Flake 8. And let's see what it does. This is taking a long time, and I already know why that is. That is because Flake is also going to test my virtual environment. So I'm going to exclude the virtual environment. And run it again. And that's better. So I see I do have some problems here. Expected 2 blank lines. Yeah, that's something I always do as a trainer. I never use these 2 blank lines between classes and functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore that error. And there we go. Everything works. So now I can test my code locally. I can lint the code locally. And the next thing I'm going to do is build the code locally. And the goal for me is to create a wheel package. Now, how am I going to do that? For this, I first need a PyProject toml file. And here I'm going to specify the name of the package and the version. Actually, my code editor shows a warning here. Let's see what it is. Let me close the file and open it again. And the error is gone. Okay, so that is the configuration file I need to build this project. Now to actually build it, I'm going to use the build module, which I need to pip install. And now I can actually build the project. Building goes by using the build module, and I'm going to add a flag, the W flag, which says that I'm only going to create a wheel file. And I go back, and indeed now we have this distribution folder with a wheel package. Very nice. Locally, everything is set up. So I can now pip install the package directly from my distribution folder. And that works. As you can see, it installed version 001. Now let me create a test script. I will just create it here in the root. Let me call it package test. And now I want to import my package. Let's try this. I'm going to import the calculator module as cal. And let me see if I can actually use it. I should be able to access operations from it. And the operations module has function add. Let me check this. And I will execute this. And that does not work. Now I have an idea what this could be. I think I need to add a file here called init.py. And let me see if this is already enough. So what I will do is I will pip uninstall my package. And I will build it again. And I will install it again. Yes. And let me see if I can now run the package test script. And actually, I still cannot do it. Now, as I already told you, I'm not an expert at packaging my code, but what I think I need to do is I need to explicitly import calculator.operations in this empty init file to expose it to the outside. Let me try this again. So let me also increase the version number so we can actually check what will happen. So again, I will pip uninstall the calculator. I will build it again. And install it again, but this time I want version 2. And there we go. As you see, a new wheel was created here when I build it. And what I can do now, I hope, is actually run this code. And look at that, the number 9. That is indeed 4 plus 5. The next thing to do is push this code to GitHub. But I want to exclude some things. I create git ignore. Let's see what to exclude. I can exclude the build folder. I can exclude the distribution folder. When I save this, this should actually reflect, and there it is. I can exclude my virtual environment folder. I will exclude PyCache folders. And I can also exclude the egg files. So let me check. Yeah, looking good. I should now be able to push all the required files to Git. So let me test if that works. Yeah, looks about right. Now I push. There we go. Let's see what we get here. Okay, the code is now in the GitHub repository. Now I create an action. I actually get a few options. GitHub recognized that I'm dealing with Python code here. And let me see what we can use. I want to be able to build a package. This one also puts it on PyPy, which we are not going to do, so I won't choose this one. This one deals with a regular application, and this one might have what we want. I will just use this one and then see what kind of a workflow it generated. So this file is a GitHub workflow, and the individual elements of it are steps, and the smallest parts are actually actions. And the whole thing is called actions, which is a little bit confusing, but that's how it is. When I say workflow or actions in this tutorial, I all mean the same thing. Now, I'm not going to edit this code here. So what I do is I just commit the changes. And if I go to the root, you can actually see that I got a new folder, a GitHub folder, and in it is a workflows folder, and in it is this new YAML file. So I pull the code and I go back to my code editor. And here we have it, GitHub workflows with the YAML file. I'm going to remove this comment. I'm going to make this file as clean and small as possible. So the name here, that's just the name of my workflow. It can be anything. I could say test, lint, and build a package or whatever, but I'm just going to leave it as Python package. Now, when should it run? Well, in my case, it should just run when we push the code. And then it has a job, which is a build job, and it specifies the machine it's going to run on. And what I can do here is I can say, I don't want to test this for all these Python versions. Instead, I'm just going to test it on the latest Python, which is 3.13. So then the next step, first one is to check out the code. Then it is going to set up Python. I am also going to increase this to version 4. And then it's going to install some dependencies. Now it's going to upgrade pip. It's going to install Flake and PyTest. And then it's going to install the requirements of my project. But since I don't have any, I'm going to delete this line. So that brings me to the linting part. And instead of taking the default here, I'm going to just run flake8, and I'm going to specify this flag, which means that if there are problems with my coding style, the build would not fail. And then I'm going to just let this run and see what happens. So the last thing in this script is the actual testing. And I'm going to use this command. Well, these are a couple of steps, like checking out the code, installing Python, the dependencies, running flake8, and testing it with PyTest. So let's just see what happens when I push the code. I'm going to use a shortcut here. This git zap command is a combination of git add and git commit. Okay, let's check what happens. I'm going to actions. Look at this. This first action here was triggered by adding this YAML file to the system, and the action was successful. And right now, the second action is running, and it's also successful. So I'm going to click on it, and let's see what happened here. The job completed successfully, but I do get a warning. Let me see how to fix that. Yeah, I have an idea. Let's check something. I think I can even up this to version 5, which should take care of that warning, but we'll see that when I commit the next time. So let me go back, and now I just click this job here, and we can actually see what happened. So I can see all these build steps: set up job, run actions, set up Python, install dependencies, then the linter. And actually I got linting errors, which I expected because it has this expected 2 blank lines thing that I explained before. And also I get a warning that I import calculator.operations and did not use it. And actually this was in that dunder init file. So I'm not sure if I can actually prevent this warning. Well, I could exclude it, of course, from Flake, but for now, I'm just going to accept it because I know why it happened. The only thing I will do now is I will ignore this E302. And then in the next run, these errors or warnings should not appear anymore. So then the test ran, and look at this. 2 tests have passed. Let's actually, as an experiment, let a test fail. For example, I'm going to change my operations code, and by accident I multiply here where I'm supposed to subtract, and I save all the files, and I'm going to do a new git push. So notice I'm not checking anything locally, I'm not running tests, don't do flake, I'm not building anything. The only thing I did was change the code, and then here I can go to actions again, and a new action is executing, and it fails. Now let's have a look. Why does it fail? The first thing that I notice is that the warning about this node version is gone. So upping it to version 5 of setup Python did that trick. Now I'm interested. What went wrong here? So I can actually already see it. It already expands this section here. I indeed see that my subtract test failed. Let me fix it. And let me do another git push. And we repeat the steps. We go to actions and we wait until the workflow is done. Now we see that the workflow finished successfully. And I click on it. And I click on the job and the build. And look at that. Let me check the tests. Yep, that worked. And also the linter should now only have this single problem with this unused import. Pretty cool. This is already a working CI system where my code is automatically checked when pushing to GitHub. We have finished these tasks. But now I want the wheel package to be created automatically when I push the code. Now the first thing I'm going to do is actually increase the version number again. So I have to add an extra step now. I will use the build module to build my package. So before I can do that, I also have to pip install it. And I'm going to add another step, which is called build wheel. I'm going to execute the build module again with this W flag, so I will only create a wheel package. And then what I will do is, once the build has succeeded, I will also store the artifacts that come out of it. So this has a dependency on actions upload artifact. And I think this is version 4 I need here. And here I'm going to specify 2 outputs. The first one is the name of the artifact, which is calculator. And the second thing is what to upload. And in my case, that's going to be everything from the distribution folder. And I think this should do it. So let me test it. I'm going to check the actions. A new workflow is running. And let's see if that works. It's ready, and I'm going to click on it. And this time you will see that the job has succeeded successfully, and that we have a new section here with artifacts. Now, artifacts, when I click on them, it starts to download it. So I go to my downloads folder, and what I got was a wheel file. So now it is actually time to test this wheel if I can use it in a brand new project. So I'm going to create a new folder. I call it test wheel. and it's empty. So what I do is I create a main script and I open it in my editor. Now what I expect to do is to import calculator again. But in order for this to work, I of course have to pip install the package here. So I will again create a virtual environment for this. And this way I'm sure that I'm not using anything that was installed by my other work. So, and now I can pip install from my downloads folder, and I will use this file directly. I pip install it. Let's see if this makes sense. Yep, this is an empty virtual environment. And I have calculator installed. And now I should be able to use something from the calculator. So let me print cal.operations. And I save the file and I execute the code. And look at this. Number 9. If you want to recreate the steps with example code, you can go to my GitHub account and clone the project. I will put a link to it in the description. Now I'm pretty sure I will add more DevOps stuff to the channel soon. But in the meantime, here is another video that might interest you.